Welcome back, everybody. We did start the council meeting at 10:30 this morning, and for one public excluded item, which was item 4 on the agenda, and which was the consideration of tenders for the sale of the council's relocatable buildings. The mayor and the deputy mayor had a conflict of interest in this matter, and both left the meeting. Councillor Ellis was elected as the chairperson for this item, and the result of that will be known when that matter comes out of committee. So, with it being Māori Language Week, I'll start off with a karakia. Whakataka ki te uru, whakataka ki te tonga. Kia ora, ma kina kina ki utu. Kia ma taratara ki tai. I hiki aka ana ti ata kura. Hi te, hi hoka, hi hauhu, ti hei, Māori ora. Cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south. Let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. It is the breath of life. So the first item, we've done the apologies and we've done extraordinary business and declarations of interest. We're now up to confirmation of the minutes. Any alterations or additions on page 3? And that's the council meeting of 4th of September 2024. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Can we move in a second? That's the... Those minutes are correct. Councillor Lovett, Councillor Cameron. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Next item is the receipt of the minutes of the Methven Community Board. Just one question, like for Philippa, these are still unconfirmed, but we still receive them? Yes. Yeah. Someone like to move that we receive these minutes? Councillor McMillan, Councillor Todd. All in favour, please say aye. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Councillor Hooper.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just said it was just a picky one, number 7, item 7. The Methven Community Board allocates declines. Which one is it? There was only one. It's the.
It just says allocates declines. The resolution can't be right. Allocates declines.
Oh, I've got you. Yep. Yeah, we'll take the word allocate out. They'll adjust that when they confirm their minutes at Methven Community Board. But thanks for picking that up. Councillor Cameron?
Just a query around the Kids Methven Skate Park. That is a skate park. I thought that was vested in council, but what does it mean the funding is not vested in council?
Councillor McMillan? Councillor Cameron, you push a button.
Thank you, through the chair. So it just means that the Kids Methven Committee had a little bit of funding left over, and the funding, we discussed that and said that that could be used by the council for anything in the future. So the money was still held in the Kids Methven bank account, and if the council needed it at any stage, they would just let Kids Methven know.
So where it's got, may I ask a follow-up question, please?
Yes.
So so the Kids Methven have still got it, the skate park group, the money. So they're not vesting it in council. So the council is to approach them if they want to get rid of graffiti or put some new concrete down or whatever to do with the kids' skate park. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the manager of Open Space is aware of that little bit of money. It's about $1,000, and so he knows that if there's any sort of maintenance or anything that needs to be done, there's some available.
No further queries. Moving on to the next item, number 7, Road Safety Coordinating Committee, which the meeting was held on the 3rd of September. We need a move in a second that we receive these. Councillor Hooper, Councillor Wilson. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Any discussion on those minutes? Councillor Wilson.
It was noted that we have a good system of repairing our potholes, and Wakatahahi with their main roads, you ring pothole, was it? 0800 potholes, and you can report any problems on the main roads. So I think if people, instead of coming to us, they should be going to them about their potholes on their roads.
Perhaps in our weekly document we put out in the newspapers, we might put that in. If there's a pothole on the state highway, this is the number they ring. Perhaps we could do that.
Yes, we'll make a note of that and get that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, and it's advised to council on possible approvals required to divert water from the Belmacan stream. We have Tony, Tanya and Mark. Welcome. Anything further to add to your report?
Thank you. Through the Chair, nothing further to add except to recognise that this has been the work of a very big team sitting in behind us to get a lot of the information together. So we're very grateful to everybody's help, both within the organisation and with our external parties.
And we are also grateful for the work you've done to turn this around in a quick manner. It has been timely on your behalf to get it to us in this timely manner. Hamish?
Just one brief comment from me. I'll also express my thanks to the team who have worked to prepare this information, and just to underline that we have tried very hard to make no judgment call on the merits of a consent application or indeed on its chances of success, but to simply try and outline the implications of council doing so and leave that advice in front of you for evaluation and consideration. So that's, we've tried very hard to give effect to the council's request for this particular report.
Councillor Lovett, before we go to questions, you have a...
Yes, you've had conversations with ECAN. Have you actually sat down with and had conversations with the actual DOC people as well to get a feeling from them whether they'll help us through this passage to get the consenting, or whether they'll say no at the end of it?
If we decide to go down for a consent.
If we decide, yeah.
Through the Chair, yes, I can confirm that Council as ecologist has had discussions with local DOC staff regarding the DOC aspects. So
That's good to know.
So there's the report in front of us, and I'm sure there'll be some questions, so now's the time to ask them of staff of clarification, so you have a good understanding of the decision you've got to make. And there's 2 recommendations sitting in front of us. One is to seek for a consent, and one is to not seek a consent. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. Just where does the final responsibility lie with Lake Camp? You know, like the community is looking at council to maybe go for the consent, but if we say no, does it revert back to ECAN? Like, they're responsible for water. Like, if we just sit on our hands and say no, stuff you, where does the final responsibility lie with getting this consent? Yes or no, sort of thing.
Hamish?
Someone has to apply for a consent.
Yeah.
So if this council decides not to, it is open for someone else to do so. If no one applies for a consent, there will be no consent.
So
I'll have to come back to you, Tony. You've gone off. We'll come back if they've got a question. Liz?
Thank you. Through the Chair, I've just got a question, and it's on the infrastructure. So obviously, assuming that the consent went through, with the infrastructure costs, 175,000, is that to build some sort of structure in the stream, and you've got the ongoing maintenance of or monitoring and compliance of 25,000? I'm guessing that would be annual. Just trying to get my head around sort of future costs.
yes, through the Chair, yes, you're correct. That's the diversion structure. So what we know from the regional plan framework that's in place now is you won't be putting back, if consents are granted, you won't be putting back a diversion with the same infrastructure that's there now. There'll be minimum flows on the consent. They have to be monitored continuously, and that's just more complicated infrastructure that's in place. So our high-level estimates of what we think might have to go in there. Bear in mind, it comes down to consent conditions, everything. So it is just an estimate at this stage, but it's not just putting back what is currently there. I think that's a fundamental point here, based on the planning framework we're working within now.
Thank you. Can I ask another question, please? At the workshop we had, we heard that there would be some in-kind donations of some work done. Have you looked into that?
Mr. Chair, what we've tried to do is outline implications of council applying for a consent.
Okay.
And then to try and make really clear to elected members the assumptions that we have made. And then as you consider the merits of those assumptions, you can decide whether or not they are likely to be true. You can bring your own judgment call to that, and you can assume, therefore, the conclusions that we've reached around cost and implications. You can bring your own assessment of that to the decision. So we've tried to make sure that you understand why we have said something in the report, and it's really clear what assumptions you've made. And if you wish to make different assumptions, then that's clearly your right to do so.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. Do we have a gut feel on whether there will be hearings and appeals?
So again, we've just tried to outline a potential process, and only you can really assess the likelihood of that happening. We do know there are different views, and in fact you've heard those views in this room, and that may lead you to believe that objections/appeals are more likely than not, but again that is an assumption that only you can make. What we've tried to do is say that if you assume that will happen, here's the implications of that. But making the judgment call on those things is an individual matter for assessing the situation and the risk.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. Under the infrastructure and ongoing costs, have you got included there a fish screen as well as the actual structure that's needed to divert the water?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, on page 28 of the agenda in the appendix and the estimated order of costs, we have got $125,000 in there for a fish screen if it's required.
Because I think I am correct in saying in the minutes when Fish and Game gave up their consent, that was mentioned they needed to have put a fish screen in as well at that time. So
You won't know whether a fish screen is required until you go for the consent. I think that's in the report. There may be fish there, they may not, don't know until there were ecological studies done, no doubt. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you. Yeah, I also read that, Russell, it said that they surrendered it because one of the requirements was to put a fish screen in, and whether that's still standby or not, I don't know. When I add all the things up through the chair, all the costs up in Appendix 1, it comes to about $925,000, and that's presumably worst case scenario or best guess scenario.
Thank you. Through the chair, that includes $225,000 of uncertainties. So that's whether we ended up in an appeal situation, and if we ended up in an appeal situation, then we are needed to get expert legal advice in. So we've put ballpark figures in based on experience around the table.
Yeah, and if it's publicly notified, I'm sure there'll be a lot of unforeseen costs around that.
Sorry, if I could just also just add to Tony, nowhere in our report do we describe it as worst case.
No, that's true.
We're not saying this is worst case.
I thought just seemed worst case.
It might,
because it was
seem
nearly $1
like
million.
that, but what we're trying to do is make assumptions.
Yes.
And then assess as best we can potential cost and time issues associated with that assumption. But it's an open question as to whether our assumptions would prove to be accurate, and therefore we are not saying this is best or worst case. We're just trying to quantify the assumptions we have made.
Thank you. My question relates to, we've read about other parts of the country having skinks as well now, or lizards. My question relates to, are there any special wildflower up there or anything else in the native flora and fauna department other than the lizards?
Through the chair, we haven't done any detailed studies. We're not aware of anything at this stage, but that would need to be assessed as part of a consent application. It forms part of the ecological assessment that would need to be undertaken to assess the effects of the activity on the existing environment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Through the chair, just on page 26, you've got rationale for selecting level of engagement, and I know previously it's been mentioned that this process could take 6 to 12 months, but there is some wording there around consulting and going through the annual plan. I'm guessing it would definitely warrant consultation in the annual plan. How would you do that? Would it be open to all? How would the consultation work?
I guess the comment that we're making there was around more around the fact of the significance of the expenditure, the potential expenditure, as to and while we've heard from a lot of Lake Camp users, for example, about their views of Lake Camp, it's more about the rest of the community and whether or not they should have a say on whether that should go forward.
Okay.
And again, just further to that, Mr Mayor, it's not certain that this council will actually consult on its annual plan in year one. If the annual plan is consistent with the long-term plan, then council has a choice whether to consult or not. So this matter might generate a need to consult, which would not otherwise exist, and therefore there's cost and time implications associated with this decision that could drive council to consult when they wouldn't otherwise have to.
Councillor Wilson?
I'd like to congratulate on a very thorough report, and it does give us a good scope is the word I'd use, of the whole process that somebody could go through to get a consent. I'm interested to understand, when they talked about donations, I understand the physical works is an easy one, you get a digger up and dig a hole. But a lot of this, am I right, a lot of this is consultants and experts and all that sort of stuff. Is that where most of the cost would happen?
Thank you. Through the chair, certainly at that pre-application and interlodgement phase, that is where a lot of the costs do sit. We need to get a hydrological assessment, a cultural assessment, an ecological assessment, and also an engineer's assessment done to understand the impacts of the proposal, and that will have to be outsourced to experts in those fields.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Notifications. So what are the options there? I saw something, it could be full public notifications, or what else can be done? And who makes the decisions?
So that the consent authority makes that decision. So if it's an if it's an Environment Canterbury consent, Environment Canterbury will make that decision. The options are either no notification, so the application just processes through internally and a decision's made internally. Limited notification, so Environment Canterbury could decide that one or two parties in particular are adversely affected, and they'll notify the application to just those parties who have the ability to submit, or full public notification, and then it's open to anyone in the public to submit. And in the event of public notification, a hearing may or may not occur. If there's no submissions, there may not need to be a hearing. So again, it's part of the assumptions we're making about the full process. Our costs in here are on the basis of full public notification and a hearing.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Cameron, just on page 15, there's a graph there of the levels of Lake Camp. And in 2021, it got down to 686 metres above sea level. How does that level compare with the graph above it, with the lowness of it? Can you correlate those two graphs?
Not easily, and we did grapple about including the different graphs. The top graph is Environment Canterbury's continuous monitoring, and that is just a lake level. So you can see at the moment it's sitting at just below 5.4. When I looked this morning, it got higher. It's about 5.5 now metres. That's taking a measurement at a specific point in the lake, whereas the graph below is done on as you've said, metres above sea level. So not easy to correlate, but we think the bottom graph was a good example of the data that we've got over that time period back to 2020, whereas the top graph is just recent data and just sort of showing that increase in the lake levels over the last 30 days where there has been a little bit of rain in the high country.
And the graph below, which goes back to 2020, the lowest point was in May 2021 at 686, and at the moment, or back in May of this year, it was 1 metre lower at 685. So it's a metre lower than what it was then, and it filled very quickly. This with the rain event of 2021, which we all remember, and it filled very quickly. That graph that's there, how far back does it go into history, do you know?
So we've taken that graph from Environment Canterbury's presentation to the workshop, and my understanding is that's the level of the data they've got, the history of the data, but it would have to confirm that with Environment Canterbury.
Yeah, I think we have had a presentation from a retired hydrologist who says it's been low before. He's getting on in years and has a lot of memory, and it's been low many years ago on more than one occasion is what he was saying. So it's not unique, this time period we're in, I don't think, listening to what he was saying. Councillor Cameron.
I'm probably asking a question that's not possible to be answered, but through the chair, we have had experience trying to get approval to build a bike track, and that was denied because of the skinks or the lizards. Is there any other experience of councils trying to get approval to do this type of work throughout New Zealand with the regional councils? Do you know of any? Is there any other examples? You know, trying to gauge whether it's worth this investment or otherwise.
Hamish?
Through Mr. Chair, a very hard question
Yes.
to answer, and so we haven't tried to answer the likelihood. We've tried to assess the cost in the likely event that we'll be asked to provide it if we apply for a consent. But there is a story online right now elsewhere in New Zealand about a person trying to do a development and being going through a process around some lizards. So
Yeah, I read that.
You'll have to bring your own judgment as to whether or not an application would succeed or not. All we've tried to do is we've made an assumption that it will be required, and we've made an assumption of what the cost would be. But and we've also tried to say in this report that we are not trying to say if you follow this you will get a consent.
No.
And we've made that really clear as well, that it has an uncertain outcome. So you could commit to this process, the assumptions will either prove to be right or wrong, the costs will be accurate or less so, and we cannot guarantee the outcome of that application process.
I understand that. I was just trying to seek some way to balance, if it's balanced, to reduce the guessing, which is essentially what we do. We spend $1 million and we're guessing, or we don't and we're still guessing. Yeah.
Councillor Lovett.
Just going back to the lizards, I'm just wondering when DOC does its count in that, whether somebody, another organisation can be there to help them to see what's going on, if we can ask for that, from where we've been in the past with this. You know, we've got to take them at their word, but it would be nice to be there on that journey and see what is there, being accountable.
Got a question there, I think, is how accurate is the consultant who does the work?
It's
It would be our obligation to do it as part of applying for a consent. So it'll be as accurate as the person or the capability of the person we engage to do it.
Okay,
And
I
then
thought it was DOC.
and then DOC and /ECAM will be considering that information as part of their process to consider a consent and or permit. But the gathering of data is an obligation of the applicant. If that was council, that would be us.
It'd be us that counts it. You know, through this whole thing here, you know, we're getting consultants getting paid, you know, big money to do modelling and everything else, but can we ensure that those that have been up there at the lakes for the last 56 years helping diversion and stuff and got all their knowledge, is just the individuals, that's going to feed into all this process as well?
If a consent is applied for, and we haven't got to that stage yet, then those people who live up there would be submitters and present their information to the hearing, I would think.
So it wouldn't be part of
the issue here is trying to give you as accurate as possible an idea of what will be required by the consenting authority if we make an application. So the consenting authority, we think, will ask for those studies to be done. How they then assess that, how they balance it with other information, how people then submit if it's a notified application, is all part of the assumptions you make about the process.
I was thinking more of the history needs to be with it, yeah.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. If we wanted to defer this to the annual plan, what's the process?
Through the chair, it would mean that there would be no further work undertaken on this in the meantime, and it would become a matter for engagement through the annual plan. We wouldn't be taking any action in terms of getting the pre-application material together to lodge a consent. It would put everything on pause until probably the end of June next year, when council would still have to come back to make the decision to go ahead or not.
Councillor Hooper? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. My understanding is the skinks in question aren't actually in the stream. They're possibly in the path of some machinery that would need to get there and get the job done. So my question is, the infrastructure, and now it's changed. Some of the residents have said if we get 50, 100 with shovels and manual labour, my question is, have you done any work on whether that's a possibility?
Through the chair, so the wildlife permit's required if you're disturbing wildlife. So if there's anyone out there potentially disturbing wildlife, then a permit is required to authorise that disturbance. So whether they're up there by hand or by machine, there's still going to be disturbance in some, if the lizards are there, and that's what we don't know at this stage. That's why we've been very careful in the report to say whether a wildlife permit is required will depend on that assessment that's done. Ecologists going up there assessing what's actually there, and then would have to make a decision in consultation with DOC, obviously, around what infrastructure is needed. But we know it's physical infrastructure that's going to be needed. It's not digging out a channel, it's putting in a diversion structure. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Yes, yeah, page 18 and early 19. I'm not really sure what I'm reading here. So there's in block B allocation and in block A. A is fully allocated and B is not reliable for the minimum flow restrictions. So is that really important for this part, or are we far enough away, or is it in the same catchment? Why is it there? Why is it standing there?
So I might take you through the role on page 29 of the agenda. So Environment Canterbury consent staff have been incredibly helpful to date, bearing in mind we don't have an application in front of them to do a pre-app, about giving advice around the rules, the likely rules under which the consent would need to be applied under. So what we do know for the taken use of surface water, Rule 13.5.5 is the rule we'll need to apply under. So that rule is clear that the taking use of surface water in the Ashburton River Hakatere catchment is a discretionary activity. So that Ashburton River Hakatere catchment is a defined area in the Canterbury region, Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan, and it includes Balmacan Stream and the Lake Clearwater area. So we have to apply under this rule. What Condition 2 of that rule says is that any proposed take must meet a flow regime within either the A block minimum flow on the Ashburton River or the B block minimum flow. So the A block is fully allocated, a number of surface water takes on the Ashburton River. So our only option is to apply through, if we apply for consent, is through the B block allocation. There is a very small allocation available. If there was no allocation available, the consent application would fall under Rule 13.5.6, which isn't here, and it's prohibited activity, so you cannot apply for consent. What Condition 2 means that if a consent is granted for a taken use of surface water from Balmacan Stream, there will be a minimum flow condition that's linked to the Ashburton River monitoring point at State Highway 1. And that will mean that no water can be taken when the Ashburton River at State Highway 1 is flowing at less than 14 cubic metres per second. What that means with unreliability is that the river is very rarely at 14 metres cube per second. So as a comparison, the lake could take, at Lake Hood we can take 100 litres a second from when the river's at 6 cubic metres at State Highway 1. We've only been able to take, for the first 6 months of the year, on a handful of days, because the river's been below 6 cubics. So the consent application, the rule we would have to apply under here, there'd be a condition where you couldn't take from Balmacum when the Ashburton River's at 14. So it's significantly higher, which means it would be an unreliable take, potentially. So this is the planning framework we're working within.
Thank you.
So just to add to that, and the question will be, if the Ashburton River Bridge is probably 60, 70 kilometre or more from the take, and how sensible is that, is what the question will be asked. So if it's not sensible, could a minimum flow through a consenting process be put on the Balmacan stream? Is that possible through the Land and Water Plan?
No. What's more likely to happen is there's potentially 3 minimum flows. There's one for the Balmacan stream, there's one for the Ashburton River South tributary, because that's also a requirement of the Land and Water Regional Plan, and the Ashburton River. So it would be prohibited activity for a consent that didn't have that B block minimum flow condition on it. So we have explored this with ECAN in detail. So that is the rule that applies for this activity.
So the Land and Water Plan, active plan now, would make it difficult to actually get water out of the stream if you got a consent?
That based on the discussions we've had to date with Environment Canterbury, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
On page 14, I just want to explore the number 2. It said the outcome of the meeting was the meeting with the Lake Holders Association presented to the Ashburton Zone Committee. The outcome of that meeting was to request for the Ashburton District Council to apply for a resource consent to take water. Is that's quite a black and white thing? Was it a request, or was it they had a desire to get a consent, or was it a request? I just want to explore that thing there, because it says there the outcome of the meeting was a request for the District Council to get one, which is pretty black and white. They're asking us to do the work, or was it a discussion around there needs to be a consent? I just wanted to clarify that.
Did a formal? I don't know if a formal request came. Was it?
I'd have to check the minutes of that meeting, but it was really clear to us, and from a raft of communication from particularly the hut holders, and indeed that they were suggesting that the best applicant on behalf of the community was the council. And so I think it is fair to say that the Hut Holders Association believed we were the right group on behalf of the community to make an application for resource consent, and we've certainly dealt with this matter in that light. To the point that was raised earlier, of course anyone can make the application for the consent. We're turning our mind to what are the implications if council was to make the application.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Yeah, I see this as highly significant regarding people, cost and risk. So my question is, how much does it cost to do an annual plan process? Because I think this would trigger it.
Consultation process.
Yes.
I guess it depends on how broad the level of consultation you want to go and the tools that you want to use, but it could be sort of 20 to 30k overall.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Tony, just so I've got it right in my head, Rule 13.5.5, was that in place when the consent was in place prior to 21?
No, through the chair, the previous consent was sought under a different planning framework, a very different planning framework to what's in place now.
The rules have changed. No further questions? No, thank you. Well done. Thanks for the information, it was very informative. We have a recommendation there, councillors, in front of us. There's two. The first recommendation is parts 1, 2 and 3, or there's another one which is an or with one part to that recommendation. Who would like to sponsor something? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move the or that council directs officers not to proceed with applying for the necessary resource consents and dock authorisations to divert water from the Belcane stream to Lake Camp.
Seconder for that, Councillor Brown. Do you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Ellis, speak to the motion. Okay. Councillors, it's open for debate. Councillor McMillan.
I'd like to move an amendment that we defer this to the annual plan.
I'm thinking if this, now this is a whole new motion. If this survives, this recommendation, there'll be no need to go to an annual plan. If it is not survive, then the other option will come in and then that can be taken to the annual plan. Does that make sense? Seeking guidance.
I understand potential ruling. Philippa, just help me. Usually an amendment, in my knowledge, would be if it was a direct negative. Deferring could be deemed to be an amendment, Philippa, as opposed to making a direct decision now.
I believe it could be an amendment, but it does put the other motion in jeopardy a little bit. So, based on what the Mayor's directed, if you foreshadow your amendment, you could foreshadow that you'd be amending any decision to proceed with a consent, whereas the motion in front of council at the moment is not to proceed.
Yes.
Unless we have another part to this motion, number 2, that it gets moved to, the decision gets moved to the annual plan. Just looking for some wording.
We do have a motion that perhaps the mover and seconder might be prepared for the motion to read that officers are directed not to proceed at this time and the matter be deferred to the annual plan. That might be the amendment that could be considered. But if this, I think it is a direct negative, the proposed amendment, because the motion is not to do something, and the amendment is to do it at a later date. So I think it is probably a negative, unless.
I'm agreeing with you. It is a direct negative to the motion we've got.
Just as the mover, Mr Mayor, I'm not prepared to accept the amendment. I'm happy with my motion as it stands.
As it stands. Councillor McMillan, do you still want to have an amendment which will be a direct negative? Councillor Cameron.
If we vote on this motion, I'll do nothing.
We haven't got a motion yet.
Oh, I thought we had.
We have got a motion. We've got an amendment.
Yes, and I support the amendment. I would like to see if there's some wiggle room or some way we can deal with this, because we have had a huge groundswell of support with regards to seeing what can be done for Lake Camp, and we may get more water this winter, so we might have other considerations. We just don't know. I would support that amendment, but if we vote on the motion that has currently been moved and seconded, essentially our amendment is gone. Is that correct?
No, we don't have a seconder for the amendment yet. But
No. If we vote on the motion, if we're not allowed to put the amendment through, I was going to second the amendment, but then.
Mr Mayor, the motion could be lost. So I think if those councillors who don't support the motion as moved, your best course is to vote against it, and perhaps through that debate, someone is foreshadowing what they will do if it's lost, and then you can judge that accordingly. It'll have the same effect as accepting it as an amendment in reality, but I think the amendment is a negative to the motion, which is not allowed. It's meant to change its course rather than be a vote against.
Councillor McMillan, how do you wish to proceed?
I'll see how the original
So you're withdrawing your proposed amendment?
Well,
We haven't, it
I'm
hasn't
not
got
quite
there.
sure what,
No, I haven't accepted it yet.
yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to, I mean, I would vote against the current amendment, current motion, because then it would be lost forever. I want to see this come through the annual plan process, but there's no other way to,
So that's your view, and the
and
rest
I
will
asked the
vote on it.
question before what the process was, and, yeah, hoping I'm a little bit stuck, to be fair. So, I'm happy for the motion to go through, and I'll be voting against it.
Right, so there is no amendment. The motion we have is that council directs officers not to proceed with applying for the necessary resource consents and dock authorisations to divert water from the Balmacan stream to Lake Camp. It's been moved by Councillor Ellis, been seconded by Councillor Brown. It is now open for discussion. Councillor Wilson.
First, I'd like to recognise the community and how they said that they were willing to contribute and they wanted this done, which contribute normally meant go up with a shovel and dig some. But in this case, contribute maybe some pro bono work by professionals because that's where the big amount of work is. And that was my first point about the cost of it. The second point is, I think this is just about getting a water consent, and that many of those have been got in our district for irrigation and for stock water, for lots of things. And people tend to undervalue the value of those consents. As we can see here, this could be for a small consent, and it could be close on $1 million. So when council owns water consents, it should value them. So my take is I support the motion as it stands, because I don't feel council is the right person to be going for this, because the result would be everybody would expect council to pay for everything, and we would have to rate it generally across all the people of the district, which is not quite right. Whereas there is the opportunity, because this paper sets out the pathway to get a consent. It's very well written. It tells you the pitfalls and the benefits, and if you've lost at certain areas when you'd get out, and all this sort of optionality. Maybe a community group can be set up, because that was one of the things they said, if you had to give a little, you could get money and get resources. Maybe this is the time for a community group outside of council to do it, and council could support them. And if you decided to support them, you could put money towards it, but not being the lead, because it's such a risky process, and it's asking us to make big decisions about, $1 million decisions, which I don't think we should be doing in this case.
Speakers for or against, Councillor Lovett.
I believe we have a moral obligation to the public that we need to move forward with other organisations to forward this through. Exactly what Richard said. I just don't think we can walk away. This is in our main tourist area up there, and it's for recreation for the district as well. And these two lakes were put aside for the district to use, and all the other lakes up there were left in their natural states. And look, at times nature does need a hand, and the locals have been working on this for the last, 50 odd years to keep water in this lake. And we're looking at climate change, and if we kind of leave it out for another year and nothing gets done, that lake's going to be a mud pond, and where's everybody going to go? I'm against.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably in the state, I've been in favour of the consenting process, as we have a vested interest in maintaining the lake's pristine images. But in front of us today, we have a report with what I would call as 49 hurdles to a consent, which is no guarantee it will be successful. And if we go the whole way, as has been pointed out, you've got total costs of $600,000 plus, and then maybe appeals of another $225,000, which is a shame, really, because all we really want to do is continue with the consent that we've had in place for many years. But it just demonstrates really how our country is becoming quite hard to do business with, really. But I can't sit here and agree to a project or a consent process that could take $900,000 and with no guarantee of success. So I am speaking in support of the motion to refrain from proceeding.
Councillor McMillan, speaking for or against.
Thank you. I'm speaking against the motion. I think it does need to come back for public consultation. We have heard from a few people who are passionate about the area, but we haven't heard about from everyone, and if it ends up being paid for by the general rate, if we go down that track, then I think that everyone needs to be consulted.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. I'm really struggling with this one. We sat on Shelley's bus and looked at Mount Sunday and heard about exciting bike trails in that area, and I worry about how those attractions will look in the future if that lake dies. I think about the recreation part of it, and that lake is a happy place for people, and well-being of our community needs to come and play there. I think about safety with a shrinking lake and dangerous boating. I also think about a local who's gone there for over 70 years and said that he's never seen it so low. On the other hand, I think of members of our region who will not go there ever again in their lifetime, and them paying for it. And I worry about Rule 13.5.5 and the rules changing and the costs associated with that. But I would like to hear from our community, and I'll be speaking against and would like it to go to annual plan.
No further speakers for or against? Right to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There seems to be a natural assumption if we go for this consent, and I'm going to say if we were lucky enough to get it, that guarantees we're going to be able to put water in the lake. We are far, far, far from that point with needing 14 cubic metres at our bridge down here. It only happens in flood events. Under normal flow, we are nowhere near that. So when the water is needed, it's never going to be there anyway. So we spend $1 million, get a consent, celebrate it, and then not be able to use it. It just seems to defeat the purpose of the whole thing. It's a very high-risk thing. It's expensive. We've just done our LTP. People's rates are very unaffordable for a lot of people. And yes, we're talking of using money out of the dividend account, but that could also be used to offset rates. So I'm sorry, I just cannot support such a high-risk project.
I'm going to put the motion, and I know there's people speaking who've supporting and some who haven't, so I'm going to ask for a show of hands. All those in favour of the recommendation, and it is that Council directs officers not to proceed with applying for the necessary resource consents and authorisations to divert water from the Belmacan stream to Lake Camp. Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. 10. Motion's carried, yeah. Thank you. Next item. Number 10. Number 9, I think. Global Cities, Sister Cities New Zealand membership. Tony. Tony. Yep. Anything further to add to the report, Tony?
Thank you. Through the chair, no, nothing further to add, but happy to answer questions.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Wilson.
The Global Cities New Zealand, it's based in New Zealand. It's a New Zealand organisation, is it? Democratically elected and all that sort of stuff?
Yes, it's a New Zealand organisation. I think the current chair is...
The chair is Mayor Grant Smith from Palmerston North City Council.
Yep, that's good.
Councillor Lovett.
Just going to ask, so the students we are receiving at the moment, are they coming through this format of Sister Cities, or is it separately at another organisation level?
Do you know? Or?
Thank you. Through the chair, normally the students that are coming into our high schools, that's a direct relationship between the high school and the students' home themselves. Okay. So the benefit of the Global Cities New Zealand membership is that it does give us access to advice and guidance should we need it in this area.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. So the engagement at the moment is just the mayor's Christmas card, each year, is that?
Correct.
That's correct, with our other sister cities, yeah. And that includes the friendship cities as well.
Yep. So COVID has destroyed a lot of relationships for the overseas, and it's a matter of to start to rebuild those relationships if we wish. We have 2 sister cities and 2 friendships, or was it 3 and 2? But they are, I'd say, inactive at the moment. Yep. Councillor Cameron?
I know it's not a very expensive membership. Why was it not paid in 2023?
I just comment briefly, the sister city relationships came under immense scrutiny and pressure, I guess, through COVID. We're not entirely sure why the sum wasn't paid last year, but it was in a context of a little bit of confusion, I think, internally as to whether we had withdrawn or not. And when we got sent the invoice for 2024 and it was queried internally, we didn't pay it because we thought we might have left the organisation, and when we followed that trail we could see that perhaps that wasn't as clear as it should be, so we're bringing it all to a head now to have a definitive position on membership or not. So that there's been a little bit of a bumpy ride since COVID as to whether we were in or out, that contributed to payment one year and not payment the next.
Can I ask an additional question? I don't remember it coming to council, but I may be wrong. I don't recall discussing it in COVID times or post-COVID or pre-COVID.
No, and there are a number of different recollections as to whether we did or didn't. What we're trying to do now is, for all time, solve it by a council resolution, so it's utterly clear whether we're a member or not.
Sure. I have some comments to make, but I'll make them after I'd like to move the motion.
Yep. Tony, can you remember how long we've been a member for?
We've been a member since 2008.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you. If we agree to carry on, do we intend to actively seek out sister towns or cities elsewhere around the world?
Through the chair, that would be at the direction of council. We do have a number, as you see, under bullet point 13 of sister cities and friendships and arrangements in place. So perhaps we would start with trying to strengthen those initially and reach out before we started to try and seek anything new.
Councillor Cameron?
If there are no more questions, I'd like to move the motion, please. You got a question there? Oh, you seconded it, yeah.
There's no more questions? No. Okay, there's a motion there. You've moved, Councillor Cameron moved, and Councillor McMillan seconded.
Second.
Open for debate. Thanks, Tony. Liz?
I support this. At the Welcoming Communities conference that I went to in July, there was a lot of talk about sister cities and how economically they can get together with those sister cities, have exchanges, and I know, I think it was Rotorua in particular had a very strong sister city arrangement, and their high schools were benefiting from exchanges with those students. So I think it's something that we can work on. And as a note, I think it was about 5 years ago when I was in Japan, I went to visit our sister city in Minami-Uonuma and met the mayor over there, and we had presented them with a painting from our 30-year anniversary of being a sister city, and I saw that in his office. So I think it's an important thing to be part of.
I do recall when Councillor Don McLeod was on council, he also visited a sister city. It may have been Virginia in the United States, I think. That's going back a few years, but it hasn't been active for some time, and COVID's probably the cause of that. So if we do want to do it, we probably need to do it properly as well. So we used to have a sister city subcommittee, and it's going back quite a few years, but if it was to be enacted, and it probably needs to put some good input into it if we want to do that. Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to, no, I look at it as one of these nice to haves. The organisation itself is looking for more funding. They're running at a slight loss, and the sister cities we have here, they haven't been active, and only really the Japanese one. And then I know when they used to come, the Chinese, you know, they sort of put the pressure on us to get involved. And I'm just thinking, is it going to put another cost on our economic development team to get more active in this space? So we, you know, I think we're better off doing our local tourism and visit to promotions. Maybe down the line, rejoin.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I speak in favour of this. I remember, I think it was 6-7 years ago, someone from Ashburton in the UK came to visit a meeting we were having in the old chambers over there, presented a gift, and they were thrilled to come and see their sister city and be able to come and present something. So I think it's our fault that we've let it lapse as much as anything, and I think you're right, Mr Mayor, that if we do rejoin, I think we need to do it properly.
Councillor Cameron.
I'll speak.
You're not want to reply yet. Councillor Hooper.
I speak against it. I'm not sure what we get out of it. I don't think we need to be a part of this to be in relations with Ashburton and Devon. Still welcome to come to the council meeting. Not sure why we have to pay $566 to these guys for that to happen. We can still talk to Liz's friends in Japan as well. So I speak against.
No further speakers for or against? I'll go to the right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am embarrassed that we've let it lapse. We have a welcoming communities function within council, and we're a very diverse community in our group, and we had a wonderful evidence of that at the noodle night, where we had everybody was out enjoying food from various parts of the world. I think we need to, in this world today, there's any opportunity for friendship and relationships internationally and nationally must be welcomed and appreciated, and I think that we should definitely support the Sister City initiative and try and meet and engage and have a relationship with our sister cities in the most positive way. Thank you, and I urge you all to consider that when you vote, please.
Which we'll do right now. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item number 10, Dog Control Policy and Practices Report. Welcome, Rick. Page 37. Anything further to add to your report, Ian?
Thank you. Nothing further to add through the chair. Thank you.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Brown.
On page 38.7, he had 110 dogs impounded. 2 were basically gone to heaven and 19 are rehomed. So what happened with the other dogs? Are they going back to the owners?
Thank you. Through the chair, from the 110 dogs there that were impounded, and that will be as a result of, for instance, wanderings picked up and so returned to the owners.
Okay.
So not necessarily an enforcement issue.
Okay.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, another question. You've got 3 parks there, but we've got a park in the industrial park as well. Is that not a dog park? I thought we put one in there. Or is it not?
Yeah. Thank you. Through the chair, it looks like that's been omitted. So we'll have to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Just a question relates to funding. I see in there that 95% comes from fees and charges and the general rate is 5%. So the ratepayer in generally is not paying for the dog pound and the cost of dealing with these dogs. Is that correct? It's a cost neutral activity pretty much.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Through the chair, we had 2 hearings this year. Is that sort of on par with other years, or is that sort of a few more than we would normally get?
Thank you. Through the chair, it's really based on the offender wishing to appeal. As we classify dogs, then it's down to the evidence that we've produced for that and the robustness of that. So occasionally you'll get the situation here where there's an appeal.
Question, Rick, you you do enforcement of the dogs and fines are issued. How many people don't pay their fines? Is it?
Thank you. Through the chair, that's something we can look into further for you and perhaps put through the activity briefing, because some will go to the courts and be processed there, so we can look at the figures, the end result figures, because sometimes the courts will cancel it, and then we find out later as well. Some they'll go into an arrangement with the courts, and the payments we get later. So we can look into finding further information for you.
It would be useful information, I think, for what success rate you have through the courts and how this gets paid. Also on page 40, the breakdown of registered dogs and complaints received. The prosecutions, there's 0, and I dare say prosecution is when it's successful. So do you have any prosecutions that go to court that are not successful?
Thank you. Through the chair, we've had no prosecutions in the reporting period. So the hearings have dealt with matters there, but there's been no cases that have gone for through the summary proceedings stage.
Previous years, have we had any?
I recall one case that we've taken to prosecution, and it tends to be in that kind of figures.
Just singles, yeah. Thank you. Any further questions? There's a recommendation there that we receive the report, and also we make the report public. Well, it is public, available now. Councillor Cameron, you want to move?
Yes, please.
Councillor Hooper, second.
Thank you.
Did speakers for or against? Thanks. I think this is good information, and just getting it once a year I don't think is helpful. This is a big activity area of dogs behaving and some who don't, and having a little bit more of this information, which is being collected anyway in the activity briefings every whatever, would keep us up to date with how many dogs are behaving and how many aren't. So perhaps we could ask for that to be a little bit more regular instead of waiting for it once a year. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good thing. I'm wondering if we could maybe think about some comms around the process of if you find a dog. Because I was at a school this week and they actually rang Talbots directly, and they were then told to ring the council. So I understand that that's the chain. Maybe we could advertise that. Just a thought.
Thank you. No speakers for or against. No right of reply required. No. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Number 11, District Licensing Committee Annual Report. Welcome back. Page 43, Rick and Ian. Anything further to add to the report?
Thank you. Through the chair, just a clarification on the structure and personnel for the DLC. You will note there that Jane Donaldson is referred to. This is because she was the secretary alongside with me for the reporting period. And that, following her resignation, I'm now the sole secretary.
Just a question on that. We have had 2. Should Ian, who's replaced Jane, be there as well? Is it necessary?
Thank you. Through the chair, it's not a requirement, but perhaps something that may be considered later. I'll leave that for Ian to comment on.
Yes, it will be. It will be something that will be addressed.
You will address it, you mean?
Sorry?
You will address it as well?
Yes, yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Just a question. I see that most of our risk categories are very low, low, medium. I'm guessing that's what they stand for. What is a high one?
A high one would be considered with the number of persons that could be accommodated at that premise, and the activity, for instance, say a nightclub.
Okay. There'll be, and then you've got numbers like risk 2, 5, 10. I think the highest I could see in that was 15. It was a club. What does that mean? It goes renewal, expiry, risk, and risk category. Presumably there's steps within that class. Isn't it?
Page
Yes,
number.
sorry,
They're
page
in
number.
that chart, page 51. It's in that big chart. I guess it's
Mine
just,
don't match up.
Just repeat the question, start again.
in the chart, one of the titles for a column is called risk. What is, how do you work the risk out?
Yes.
Please, I should say. I don't understand.
Gotta get through the chair, by and large, the categories come down to a combination of it being a club, it being an off licence, and equally the premise itself, the activity. So there is a chart in of the Sale of Liquor Act that it's a combination of things that result with a low risk, medium risk, high risk.
Yeah, I
So
understand
again,
that.
I could perhaps use the activity briefing, because you'll see on the final page that this is to be now an online survey, and so we were looking between myself and Ian to use the activity brief to explain more about this activity.
Sure.
And we can address that then, how the calculations are made.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. I just want to make one comment, if I may, through the chair. You look at the Rokai Rugby Club has got 5 under risk,
Yep.
and Southern Rugby Club has got 15. And presumably that means Southern Rugby Club is riskier? 3 times riskier.
It can be, through the chair, it can be for the number of times that club is used as well, the number of personnel, club owners, members, sorry, and so on. This all comes into the calculation.
Thank you.
Councillor Lovett.
No, it's just, that's kind of where I was heading to, because the Heinz Rugby's always been a medium for many years, so once you're stuck in that medium, you never get out of it, or is that just where they're always going to sit for the foreseeable future? You don't recalculate or anything, or encourage behaviours, whatever, to get to the low.
Thank you. Again, through the chair. It can be, the overall risk assessment can be that, for instance, one club is used for wedding receptions, christenings and the like more than any other club. And so that can add to the risk because of the number of times it's in use, not as opposed to the number of members. So there's quite a few different calculations that go on to get the end result. And that's why I suggest it's probably far easier, because this is a more a statistical report. So it's probably far better that we use the activity briefing to just clarify certain clubs and risks and so on, and how we come to those results.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, through the chair. If a club breaches its licence or doesn't adhere to something in the licence, does the licence get taken off them, or do they get a fine? And have we had any fines like that?
Thank you. Through the chair, or any incidents are noted by, for instance, the alcohol inspector or the police, and then they will use that when the licence comes up for renewal in their overall report and make certain recommendations to the DLC for consideration.
So has there ever been any fines or anything against licences?
Thank you. Through the chair, there's not necessarily fines, and that is being looked at New Zealand wide as to who can issue fines and under what circumstances, because the police have certain powers, but it's their police alcohol inspectors, and our alcohol inspector has separate powers for different infringements. So that is being looked at because there's the resources issue.
Councillor Wilson?
I see some of the renewals expiry dates, some of them are past. Can you just explain to me how because once you're approved, you've got your licence. If you're licensed to apply, say it was going to expire next month, do they have a grace period, or how does the renewal process work?
So it's not necessarily a grace period as such, but there's an application period. So our administration staff would work with the applicants that are coming up for that renewal. So there is a crossover that occurs. And where businesses up for sale, change of ownership and so on, that's where the temporary authority would then come into play for a new owner or a new operator.
So we're meeting our sort of time frames from that point of view, which is pretty important for hospitality.
I'll move the recommendation that we receive the District Licensing Committee Annual Report 23-24. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Lovett, open for debate. And I do note, point 18, it's appreciated councillors will still wish to keep informed of the licensing activities undertaken each year, and it's therefore planned to expand the unit's activity briefing reports to include additional information on licensing matters. So we'll be kept a little bit more informed through the year on licensing matters, which we haven't been so far. So some of those things you talked about will be reported a bit more often as to how good or bad some institutions are. So any speakers for or against? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next item is Te Araroa Walking Trail. Te Araroa Walking Trail. Page 62. Welcome, Ian, Simon. Anything further to add to the report, Simon?
No, nothing further.
Nothing further. Questions, councillors? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, through the chair. Simon, I went to a few meetings in Methven with the Te Araroa Trail CE Matt and quite a few sort of Methven foothills residents, and there was talk then about how not that many people were actually registering to do the trail. So it's kind of like a donation to do the trail, isn't it? It used to be sort of $500 from the top of the North Island to the South Island. I think they've changed it, so it's $500 for each island now. But they were just, it was kind of voluntary registration. Have they done anything about that so that you can get a few more accurate numbers going forward?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm not clear on the cost structure of the broader Te Araroa, but I do understand that there is an app that this is where a lot of the information was derived from users of the app that were then surveyed by the Te Araroa Trust and subsequently Infometrics as part of this body of work.
Okay.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. I saw what Liz sent, Councillor McMillan sent a little video out of the Te Araroa walking trail, and it looks amazing. like really good. I note that in the report you comment that 515,000 is probably a benefit to the Methven Township through the walking trail. Can you foresee a situation, like we've had presentations here from the people that own the Rakaia Holiday Park and things, can you see a situation of where there'd be economic benefit for the rest of the district?
Through the chair, the people walking the longer Te Araroa, the full country walk, or at least significant parts of that, are kind of forced off the route in mid-Canterbury, so the Rakaia River is a hard stop that there's strong advice not to cross. I mean, that's not to say that somebody physically stops you, but there's strong advice not to cross. So generally speaking, what will happen as part of the planned walk is that walkers will walk out at the Rakaia and probably resupply in Methven for the next section of the route. It's considered a resupply destination due to the shops and then they re-engage on the other side of the Rakaia River and walk down through our block of the country for 3 to 4 days. Some of those will then come back out, but again, it seems to be specifically to Methven that they're resupplying in, and they're not necessarily engaging with the rest of the region. It seems to be quite a Methven-centric
situation.
Yeah.
Due to circumstance, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, their priority is, I guess, walking the route and not sightseeing.
Can I ask another question, please? So at the moment, you cannot cross the Rakaia Bridge unless you are in a vehicle or have a bike, is that right? You're not allowed to walk across the Rakaia Bridge, are you?
The route comes down to the Rakaia and then I say that.
We're talking
walk
about
across the Gorge Bridge.
Yeah, in the gorge. Can you cross it? Is there a walking clip-on bit there? Like there, so you just walk across? I don't remember seeing a walking clip-on bit.
It's not as busy as the Ashburton State Highway Bridge.
No, indeed. Because I noticed that when I read the recommendation, it says we've got to facilitate local relationships and contacts. Do you want something with a bit more oomph in it than facilitating local research and contacts? Don't we want to achieve something and try and get an extension of the walking trail, or try and get more people to benefit from the walking trail? Or...
So the report, through the chair, the report talks to, there's two use cases. So there's the existing walkers coming through, and there's potentially a potential to get them to spend more money in that Methven area as part of their resupply, maybe engaging with some other activities. But generally speaking, the feedback from Infometrics is those walkers are quite cost aware, and there isn't significant amounts more money to drag out of them. So, there may be some opportunities for vendors in Methven to do that. The broader opportunity is in the shorter walk, so the long weekend walk that they're calling Te Araroa Iti. That is the Te Araroa Trust's project, and they're now going to have to look, based on the economics of the situation, they're now going to have to look at what's viable for them to invest to make this happen. So what we've done as council is leaned in and helped them understand the opportunity. The recommendation here is for us to continue to walk alongside them, helping them engage with local groups and things like that, but not for us as council to put any investment into that. If we leaned in more, then we would, I guess, be looking at funding options and things, which I don't think is within our wheelhouse. But I mean, that's council's decision.
Councillor Hooper?
I think you might have just answered it, actually. So no cost to us if we support Simon.
Through the chair, just staff time.
Thank you.
So.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. On page 74, I circled something that said local businesses surveyed, and it talked about the Ashburton's businesses. Is that Ashburton District, or is that businesses in Ashburton who may benefit from the walkers? I know living in Methven, there's a lot of, we see the walkers all the time because they're quite noticeable with their great big packs, and you just see them shopping locally. So I don't know if that is supposed to be Ashburton District or
what it means.
through the chair, to my knowledge, that was Methven businesses, and
Oh.
I think they're using Ashburton businesses here in the sense of Ashburton district.
Yes, that makes
But
more
yeah,
sense.
Principally, they were Methven businesses surveyed.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
You mentioned there's an app, and I'm just looking there to see the app on, on the web. Is that, when you mentioned there in option 2 around engaging through the Mid-Canterbury website, would you engage through the app? Because obviously if you've got an app for walking it, you would look at the app to see where you were going next and who was available and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so through the chair, the Te Aroha Trust have the app. They do a phenomenal job in terms of catering for the walkers, doing the whole route. What I was referring to was once the route is developed, if Te Aroha Trust go on and develop the route, then there's an opportunity for the work that Shelley does to support that development through better promotion and at a more local level. So thinking about how we'd encourage people from Christchurch to maybe come out for the weekend and do that. And that would be through our website, not the Te Aroha app, although I'm sure they'd probably be using that app as well as a vehicle.
Councillor McMillan?
If there's no further questions,
think
I
there
would
is.
like to move that motion.
Second out. Councillor Hooper? Thanks, gentlemen. Open for debate. Being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you.
I was going to speak to it, but that's all right.
Oh, were you? Sorry.
Yeah, I was. Too late.
You need to get that light on a little bit quicker. You'll let me see it quicker. Item number 13, Hempstead School Pool Partnership. Welcome, Richard, Alan, Sarah. Anything further to add to your report?
Through the chair, nothing from me. I'm not looking to Sarah. No, nothing from Sarah to add either.
Councillors, questions? Councillor Cameron?
How did this come about? Did we approach Hempstead School after the closure of the pool in Tynwald, or did Hempstead School approach council?
Through the chair, there was no linkage between the Tynwald pool closure and the Hempstead aspect, but we reached out to Hempstead Pool to see if there would be an option to provide a summer pool in this instance.
Can I ask an additional question?
Yep, go for it.
Had you been told, why did you do that, I suppose my question is? What motivated that?
Through the chair, in planning the pool shutdown, we wanted to see if there was an opportunity. Hempstead Pool is the only remaining urban school pool, so it is the only option in terms of an urban swimming pool, should EA Network Centre be shut down. So we reached out to see if there was an opportunity there.
And one more question, if I can.
Yep.
What is the capacity of Hempstead Pool, and what will they charge, and who will get the monies? That's 3 questions.
One question was?
Through the chair, forgive me if I missed one of your questions. The capacity of the pool is very similar to Tynwald. It'll be around 100 kind of bather load. The charges are in the report.
$4.50.
Okay, so the charges are listed in the report. And sorry, what was the third question?
The income will be retained by EA.
Yes, correct. The income will be retained by us.
Just following on from that, the people of Hempstead who would have used the pool anyway, they'll charge, but then I'm thinking to the report, it was closed at that time anyway, wasn't it? Yeah. So there would have been no users at that time of the year.
Correct. So the Hempstead pool is currently not open to public the way they're operating it. It has been historically, but they prepare the pool through November, December. It sits dormant through January.
They moved their model so that they prepare the pool in January for February swimming, because the costs of having it over a longer period were didn't benefit them, because it was too expensive, given the real light numbers of swim days they could have in December before school finished, and then they just started ahead of this February swimming.
Yeah. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it just for 1 year, or is it going on from there on?
Through the chair, the report speaks to the intention of 1 year simply based on the planned pool shutdown at EA Network Centre and an alternative swimming option then for the district. Sorry, just to add to that, it also allows for a redeployment option for our staff during that pool shutdown.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, through the chair. So it's open in February and March to the Hampstead school community. Do people buy a key pass, or is it just open during school hours?
Yes, it's just for school users in school time. There are times when they have a community day or just a pop-up sort of school community or families or wider people in that area, but that's solely at their discretion. Or they've done one, I think, in the past where they did take some donations and it was for fundraising for a natural disaster or, you know, an event that they wanted to recognise with. So, yeah, but normally it's just for their school population.
Councillor Hooper?
Hi guys, can you explain the upgrade that's needed for the chlorination system and the balance tank cover?
Okay, through the chair, there's two parts to that. So the upgrade to the chlorination system would bring the Hampstead pool in line with the way that we upgraded all of the other district rural pools, and it is a much safer way of operating these pools. It means that the chemical handling requirements for these pools are very much reduced. So it's significantly safer. The balance tank, so the pool has a body of water that sits outside of the swimming area, and it is used to balance the water level in the pool. At the moment, the cover that's on it has kind of got very degrading timber boards over the top of it, and anybody who walked on top of it would be at risk of falling into it. So we saw that as a significant and relatively easy health and safety improvement.
Councillor Lovett?
This shutdown is quite a long one, and I think it's a good idea, but do we shut down EA every year for a couple of days, or is it every other year? Or
Through the chair, it's on an as-needed basis. It's definitely not every year. We do routine maintenance throughout the year, so we have our team doing maintenance all the time. This shutdown is to cover off items that can't be done with the pool open. We don't do them every year. It tends to be on average maybe 3 years. And you might know that other pools do them every year, and that's reflective on their maintenance schedules and the way that they maintain their pools. We're just very privileged to be able to do it every 3 years.
so you wouldn't consider it in future if we just shut for a couple of days? This is kind of a one-off, or
through the chair, the tasks that are required you could not do in 2 days. There are things like floor repairs that require significant epoxy works and tile repairs, silicon things. They have to be repaired and then they have time to cure and there's time to allow these things to work. You could simply not maintain a pool on a 2 or 3 day shutdown. 3 to 4 weeks is generally a minimum. Moana Pool in Dunedin, I'm not remembering the exact time frame. I think their swim school pool has been shut for around 3 months this year, to give you another example.
I understand there's about 5 pools at EA? Separate pools? Or?
Correct, yes, there's 5 separate pools.
Yeah. Can you shut them down individually, or are they all interlinked?
They can be shut down individually in terms of the way that they circulate. In terms of the work that is required, we simply could not have public in the pool area space. It would be, you think of silicon joints and solvents and bad smells and tradesmen's work. But the pools themselves do shut down individually, yes.
Thank you. Sarah?
I used just further to that. This closed down, as Richard said, it covers a lot of general area pool deck requirements. So going forward, the intention, like the next close down when it's required, is likely to be more of a partial one, focusing on the main pool and enabling the other pools to continue because of the work's more isolated, or a shorter close down. So we're having to do this one for the duration we are because of the type of work. It doesn't mean that it's like this forever in terms of future close downs.
This would be the first major shutdown in 10 years. Yeah, and you budgeted for it as well through the long-term plan.
Correct.
Councillor Hooper.
I'm happy to move the recommendation if there's no further
No more questions. I'll take Councillor Hooper moving. Second up. Councillor Brown. Thank you. Open for debate. Councillor Lovett.
I'd just say it's a great compromise, and it's good to see an outdoor pool will be open when there's a shutdown, and so we won't get the complaints. And I think in future, even if our pool was shut for several days, it would be nice to be able to have this communication with Hempstead School going forward.
We'll hold you to that. We won't get any complaints. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good initiative when the pool's shut to give an alternative. It's great work to staff for initiating this. It's good. I'll support the motion. Councillor Cameron.
I speak in support of the motion. I think when the Air Networks pool is closed over summer, we get a lot of feedback, but it is very important to maintain that pool as well, given the investment it is. So I think this is a great solution, and congratulate the team for coming up with it.
Councillor Todd.
I also support the motion, and as you say, Mr Chairman, it shows good initiative in opening a pool when the rest of the town is shut.
Yeah, and I think the staff have told us this is the ideal time to do maintenance on the pool, because the lowest use time, even though it is in the middle of summer, it is still the lowest use time. So the timing has been picked because of that, to disrupt as minimal people as possible. So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next, item 14, the 24-27 National Land Transport Program approved funding. And we waited and waited, and we finally got the announcement of what we were getting, even though it was 6 months behind our budget, but we got it eventually. That has been noted before. Welcome, Mark and Neil. Anything further to add to the report, Mark?
Tēnā koutou, ko Ramatua and Kai Konihira. Just try and provide a bit of clarity on where we've got to. We've made the request to NZTA based on what we approved our long-term plan. Then the indicative funding for our normal maintenance and renewals, which we got most of what we're going to think that's very good. Then the second lot of indication was for footpath maintenance renewals, and we got 36% of what we requested for that, and then road safety promotion 25% of that, and then the final approval for everything came through, and the low cost, low risk improvements that we requested, there was no indication of that prior to, but we've got zero of that. So this report is how we're going to want to deal with that, and put forward the options. We're obviously going to spend up to what's approved for subsidy, and then it's how we spend the council share that has been matched by that subsidy, and that's options 2 and 3 that's in there. So it's not ideal, but we've got the funding there. It's just how we're going to do it. Whether option 2 is basically spending it on those programs that have been underfunded, and option 3 is actually spreading it just a wee bit more on a couple of other things, or anything that councillors want to spend their money on. So that's it in some clarity.
Thank you, Mark. Just one question, high level. What did we have for our total last 3 years, and what have we been granted for this 3 years in the millions?
With the approved for the previous 3 years, I think it's in the report, it's about 46 million for our approved program for the 21-24, and it's pretty much the same for the 24-27 program. So,
to be exact, it's 45.7 million we had the last 3 years, and what we've been granted is 45.78. It's very, very close to what we had 3 years ago. Our roading network will be going backwards.
Yeah, the only comment on that is that we've actually had an increase in funding for doing that maintenance and renewals. So it's those low cost, low risk improvements and footpath maintenance is where we haven't got the funding, which makes the difference there. So it's essentially about 15 million less than what we requested. So 5 million a year, and of that is our share of that is about 2.5 million per year. So, yeah.
Would you call that increased funding, or would you call that moving things around?
I call it moving things around.
Yeah. Councillor McMillan, questions?
Oh, thank you. Page 101, you've just got the table there, and I see you requested 948,000 for road safety promotion. We're only getting 234,000, but is the signage and the sort of the new, what's included in that road safety? Is it the signage as well?
Road safety, that's road safety in terms of messages, so it includes billboard information and like national programs. It's not signage in terms of warning signs and things like that. That's covered by our other traffic services budgets and things like that. So the road safety promotion is working with the local communities like ACADS, funding for them, billboards that are on the network, working with others in the region and national programs for that, things like that, and yeah, working with other community groups and co-driver, that sort of thing. So yeah,
Okay.
it's not physical works; it's more the road safety messages that are getting out there.
Right, thank you.
Just before we go to Councillor Cameron, the number that's there, the total number for 3 years, that's the total number? There's no inflation adjustment on that?
No, it's we get a 3-year approval with no inflation. Yeah, so that's the total.
No different than other years, but no adjustment for inflation.
Only what we ask for, in terms of knowing that it's not going to be inflated, we may put like 3 or 4% on each year, but based on what we know now for this year, for the next 2 years. But it's not inflated each year. It's that 3-year program that we've got fixed.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cameron.
So if we put, just to go back to that comment, if we put 3 to 4% on each year, that comes out of rates, is that right? We're inflating it ourselves, is that what you're saying? Because NZTA don't inflate it.
What the numbers that we work is the gross amount, so the total amount, so that's subsidy and council share. So yes, both the NZTA and council match what we put forward as a bid for that 3 years. It doesn't get inflated each year, but whatever we allow for an increase each year, it's both for council and NZTA.
But I think the point is that the amount granted by NZTA is not subject to inflation.
No.
Yeah, that's what.
So that's the number for 3 years.
That's right. It is what it is.
Mark's saying, the way in which we might build up our request for funding might include an allowance for inflation, but then we're not necessarily getting what we asked for anyway. So your best is to think of that. The NZTA grant is not does not get inflated.
So when I look at pothole prevention, that money, am I correct, can only be spent on potholes? Is that right? Isn't that what the government said? Pothole money is spent on potholes?
So yeah, pothole prevention is, so there were activity classes before were maintenance, operations and renewals. So now we've got operations and pothole prevention, and it's all the same work categories are there that sit underneath that, but they've just been reallocated. So the ones under pothole prevention are sealed pavement maintenance, unsealed pavement maintenance, routine drainage maintenance, unsealed metalling, sealed road resurfacing, drainage renewals, and sealed pavement rehabs. So they can only, the money that's allocated for that can only be spent in that activity class. Previously, you could shift it between the two.
Yeah.
We could, ones in the other activities could be spent on pothole prevention, spend more there, but you can't do it the other way around now.
I've got 2 more questions. One is a general question. Do we still have that super duper pothole machine that we bought a couple of 3 years ago?
I don't think we've ever had a super duper one.
Well, it was sold to us as super duper.
And we never bought a machine. So Heb had a machine that ground up and spat out and sealed, and we called it the pothole eliminator by sort of colloquial friendly term. But we never bought anything. That was a machine supplied by our roading contractor.
I thought we paid 600,000 for it.
No, we put money aside so that could be used for doing the work on the network. It wasn't specifically that machine, but it enabled that machine to do some work on the network.
That machine proved to be not super duper, was that correct?
It did the job, but just as other dig outs, so it was a stabilising machine. So it did the job at that time, but it's still not. It's not being used around here now. It's something that Heb have got, and they use in other contracts as well.
Now you probably not anticipate what I'm going to ask now. The Wills Street rail footbridge, currently spread across the 2nd and 3rd year. Do we have a plan as to how that is going to be tackled?
Yes, we do. So we had funding approved for that. So the funding is approved. So we've engaged a consultant to actually look at and determine the extent of the work that's needed, as of today, rather than the inspection from 3 or 4 years ago that triggered us to actually do something. So once we know that, we'll get things together. I'll bring a report back to council on whether we want to bring that forward or whether NZTA will let us bring it forward. But we'll get it all geared up to go out, tender the work, based on the extent of it, and then how much that estimated cost is going to be. Whether it's more than what we've got already, then we can make a request for that as well. So we've got it underway, even though we haven't got the funding for this year. We've had the consultant doing some work on under our other funding that we have for structures. So, yeah.
Thank
but
you.
getting it underway, it does need a bit of work. Yeah.
Yep. No, I'm taking heart from this written down in this document.
Councillor Wilson.
Afternoon. Page number 106 is, I thought 106 and 107 were the probably two critical ones. 106 has approved works, and can you just explain to us what the headings on those graphs are? Because I sort of guessed, but can you tell us what they are? Because there's no headings to them.
I can answer that. In your tablets, it was cut off. One I prepared earlier had to come a different method with the headings across the top.
So obviously the first one is the total budget, by the look of it, from our long-term plan, is it? Would that be correct?
Can we just refer to the name of the when you say the first one, which column?
The purple one.
Was that A?
G, sorry, G.
Right. Okay.
Well, could you explain to us what the headings are?
Yep.
So that's why I think we should just refer to the numbered column, and then we'll all know what everyone's talking about.
So G, so the highlight in the tan, that's the 3 year, what's 3 year requested, and the next three columns make up that total.
And that's from our long-term plan, so that's consulted and that's agreed.
The long-term plan, yeah, and that's what's requested of from NZTA, yeah, and the green one is what's been approved, and column M on the right is what was in the previous 3 years.
And number L is what's L? L is?
That's the difference.
L is the subsidy.
Oh, the subsidy, sorry, yeah, the NZTA share, sorry.
So my line of questioning is, if we move down through the different, 114, 121, that we got what we approved, just with a few anomalies, obviously, in the workouts.
Yes.
And I go right down through them, and I get down to 11.487 and 11.085. So, yep, pretty simple. We got what we asked for. That's great. And I go into the local road pothole, which the government has ring-fenced, which I would agree. I think you made the comment, we would have, I would assume we would never have shifted money from pothole protection to other things, because that would be stupid to take it out of good roading and put it into other things. So if I go through sealed pavement, we're the same, unsealed pavement the same. All those are pretty much the same as what we asked for. The only thing that's missing is the 500,000 extra we put in for shingle roads, which I was interested to see how that comes out, because I thought we'd asked in the long-term plan for 1.7 and the shingle road stuff.
What is here is a subsidised roading, so what's approved by NZTA, which is the 1.2. The $500,000 is an unsubsidised amount that's sitting in our general ledger as a separate amount. So the total we've got is 1.7 to spend, but the subsidised amount is 1.2 million. So the 500,000 will be showing under our unsubsidised roading, and it's 100% cost to council.
Okay, that's fine, yep. So then if we go down to the walking and cycling, we haven't got very much of what we asked for.
Correct.
Correct?
That is correct.
And then, so from that, if we were to put on the same percentage basis, so say if we had, we'll use a figure that we had for bridges and structure renewal, 705, we got 705, so that's a bad example, sorry. If we used cycling path maintenance, we wanted 18,000, but we got 6,400. So if we were to, why would we not just put it where it lay as what we got effectively? And if we...
Yeah, that is option 2. Yeah, that we put forward is spending all we've got in terms of approved funding and the council share in walking and cycling or in road safety promotion, not sharing it against anything else, and just the low cost low risk.
I mean, in the classes that it fell, so you're shifting the money around, is that right?
That is one. That's option 3 in terms of in the options put forward. Option 2 is for cycle path maintenance. We will only spend what's approved there and the council share there, and footpath maintenance only approve it there. So that is what we're saying. That is option 2.
I'm probably trying to get my head around, there's a comment made in page number 103.
Yep.
And it says, this is mainly for the unfunded low-cost improvement data. And then it says, but also other work categories that may not be sufficient to carry out the work necessary. So I'm trying to understand what manipulation is the word I'd use. You've shifted money, you know, because it's easy to understand if we approved it. If there's nothing spent, there's nothing there. But I'm just trying to see that to compare where you've put the money, or because that's this, you know,
We weren't going to be shifting money. It was saying that the council share that has been matched by subsidy, we can still spend. And where we spend it can be where we've been underfunded, so just keep it in those same categories and spend it there, or doing on some other ones where, for example, I think in the proposed spend, there was a couple of amounts there, one under environmental maintenance and one under traffic services maintenance, where we look like already the amount we'll spend on ice gridding, we're going to go over whether we should spend some of that in there. So that's an option put forward to actually spread it around a bit. But the other option too is to keep it in the same work categories, same activity classes, and don't spend it in other areas, which is an option that we're perfectly okay with as well. So we'll manage with whatever budgets are there and wherever we want to spend it. Or maybe that you wish to spend all of our council share on sort of one big project or something like that. For example, low cost, low risk projects can be up to $2 million, and they're still called low cost, low risk. And that can be for any improvements, you know, in terms of safety and intersections and things like that.
So on option 2, how does the footpath maintenance and renewal spend be 60%, 67% of budget? Is that when?
Yep.
How could it be that if we're being 50% subsidised? Is that I got some missing the point?
Well, we'll spend up to what's been approved by NZTA, so which is 36% of what we requested. Then the council share of that difference, we can still spend on that and not get any subsidy for it. So it increases it by half that amount that we haven't received.
It means spending it where we requested it, essentially, but getting less done because it's not matched by subsidy.
Yeah.
Or because the unmatched portion essentially is unsubsidised, you can spend it on something else.
And through the chair, option 3 gives you the option, because it's deemed as unsubsidised, because it's not matched by subsidised, you as a council can decide if you would like to allocate it elsewhere, which is what our recommendation is, and that's in Appendix 2.
Councillor Michael.
Thank you. Mark, I'm just wondering, looking at these charts, where is the money for improved signage on the high risk intersections that we were improving for safety reasons, for crashes, etc.?
That's under the local road improvement one, so delineation improvements and rural delineation and intersections. So it's on any of those. So that's $250,000 we've got set for there. You may say that we want to have $500,000 there, but that's under that item, under low cost high risk.
How many intersections have you been doing on average a year to date?
Well, we haven't got a program for doing so many for a year, and that last year I think it was the 37 intersections that we did improvements on. So yeah.
So they've been brought up to the standard that we required for the safety. So you did 37 last year. Yeah. How much per intersection does it cost?
It varies on intersections. I haven't got that detail for you, but I can do more information and provide that. I don't know how much per intersection. It depends on how many extra signs need to go in and what changes are made, whether it changes from a giveaway to stop and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. So we've allocated about 250,000. We need to know that figure so we can keep improving on those intersections, because they were put at a high category. Well, yeah, they seriously needed doing, basically.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning that when we are renewing old signs, we will be renewing them with the bigger signs and upgrading, so effectively improving our signage as we replace the old ones as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, some of that cost is under traffic services renewal. So if there's an existing sign that gets replaced with a new one, that's a renewal. If there's additional signs that get installed,
and that's
then it's under the low cost, low risk.
So you're looking at doing 37. We did 37 in the last period. Do you have an indication of how many you would be likely to be doing ahead?
Yeah, not at this stage, because we're not sure how much money we're going to have to do it. So once we know that, then we can come back to see what we can actually do. So,
thank you.
Yeah, we've got a long list of intersections to improve. So.
Sure have.
So option 1 is following a directive of NZTA, hence government. And we would have 2.4 million that we wouldn't be spending on things the government said not to spend money on. So that 2.4 million would get us another 10 kilometres of road, sealed road rehabilitation, brand new road, which is what the government, which is reducing potholes, which is what the government is signalling, correct?
Yes, it is, at the expense of not doing the footpath maintenance and renewals that we've got programmed, or any low-cost, low-risk improvements such as intersection improvements. If we spend it on that, we're not spending it on those, because low-cost, low-risk has got zero funding at this stage. So if we put all of our share into something else, that means we're not going to be doing any of those wee improvements.
Our partner in this is NZTA, who've sent the directive via the government, do not spend money on that, spend it on the pothole prevention, which is New Road. They've sent the signal, why aren't we listening? And I'll be pushing for option one. You cut the footpaths, you do the work on the rehabilitation of pavement, which gets rid of the potholes out there, which are the bane of our lives. Councillor Todd. Oh, sorry, Hamish.
No, I think the signal from the government is clear. I think they would like to spend more on the balance of the network, but it can't be afforded by the government. So it is true to say they're sending us that strong signal, but equally true to say that our local share is able to be spent on other things by decision of council. So you do have the choice.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I stand to be corrected, but I think it was the Mayor of Waimak was bemoaning, I read that he was bemoaning the fact that some road users charges that are generated in Canterbury, 80 or 90% of it goes out of the region. So does the Mayoral Forum, do they have any sort of continual clout with Simi and Brown to say this is unfair amount that's staying here?
It's not the Mayoral Forum, it's the Regional Transport Committee, same members though, the mayors of the region, and they did a regional land transport plan which was presented to go to the National Land Transport Plan, and this is the outcome of the National Land Transport Plan. Hence to say they didn't listen to what we had in the Regional Land Transport Plan. 100%. They took some monies out. Yep. So Mayoral Forum or Regional Transport Committee, same peoples, have sent the signal to government. And the chair is ECAN Chairman Peter Scott, and I've seen in the paper recently his disgust with the lack of money coming back here from what leave here. So he has made it known. Councillor Wills,
So that's an argument made by many parts of New Zealand. So don't think that it's a mid-Canterbury issue or a Canterbury issue alone. And in fact, just last week I heard representatives of the Auckland Council bemoaning the fact that the amount that is invested in Auckland's roading network doesn't reflect the taxes paid there either. So the way in which taxes are gathered and invested is much more dependent on perceived roading need rather than a direct correlation between that raised in a particular area. Now I'm sure there's differences in proportions, but there are many parts of New Zealand can make the same argument that Canterbury, mid-Canterbury and the South Island regularly makes.
Yeah, may I also, across the country, low-cost, low-risk projects haven't been funded, unless there's something that's already in progress or a continuation of a previous project that's already underway. So it's somewhere across the country where they've made, it's not just in Ashburton, and you could make a case if we weren't going to get that funding, perhaps we should have asked for more for rehabs and reseals and things like that. If we had done that, we probably wouldn't have got what we requested anyway, because there's still only so much money to go around, and this is just how they've shared it or made the money available for pothole prevention, is not doing something else.
Councillor Wilson.
I understood the categories you talked about for footpaths and renewal, road safety and low risk, and you had some numbers of 67, 62 and 50%, which made sense. Can you give me those percentages as to your option 3, it must be the one that's got in Appendix 2, you know, the options that you worked through to spend the $2 million unapproved and unsubsidised $2 million, just how that would shift that percentage, because obviously that percentage was consulted on with the public and approved, and just because we didn't get half the funding, we're going to actually materially change how the split was put. So I'm just interested to know how we've changed that split at this point rather than what we'd consulted on. on a percentage basis?
Haven't got exact percentages. I'll go in the spreadsheet and can do that. It was the staff just looked at what we were still on to do for low cost, low risk, and our footpath maintenance and renewals that we've already got programmed and how they align with each other. So we haven't material shifted from that, apart from having a couple of other items in the operational. But yeah, I haven't got the exact percentages for you because it's not something I've calculated yet. So
you understand what I'm getting? Yes. I just want to understand that we haven't picked winners and losers as it was, and it's very hard for us to actually see what those winners and losers are. If we've taken money off footpaths and put it into rural shingle, that we know we can't do that, but into something else, it'd be great for us to understand that we've shifted that money around. So if the footpaths are the winner of all this, well, that's great. We know that. But if they're the loser, well, it's good to know who wins and who loses in the change.
Yeah, okay. In Appendix 2, the activity class, so that's the second column in, lists, so the top one's road safety promotion, so proposing to put another $80,000 on top of what's been approved. So 80,000 by council. The next ones are all low cost, low risk, right down to number 8 and number 9, which is operational ones, environmental maintenance, traffic services maintenance. Into those classes where we look like we're probably going to overspend based on what we've spent so far this year, even though the year's only just started, we're actually nearly a quarter way through it. So, and then the next two are the walking and cycling activity classes. So that's the footpaths, yeah. So that's footpath maintenance and renewal. So those two, another 10 and 11, and then local improvements is the last one there. So they're the numbers there that add up to those different activities: low cost, low risk, road safety promotion, walking and cycling, and a couple of operational ones.
Yeah, and I think that table is the issue we've got. We probably agree with the recommendation you've got. That table needs some work on, because I'm not agreeing with that table that's there at the moment.
To explain that, we talked about it, whether we should just keep them in exactly the same activity classes and spend them there. This is option 3 that we've put forward. We've got no problem with you deciding that you don't want to necessarily spend that money there, and you can debate that, and that's probably where, deciding on where those go, we had quite a bit of debate amongst ourselves. Amongst councillors would be quite a debate on terms of deciding where that's actually going to go as well. Whether have to do it today exactly like this, or whether we want some direction on where you'd like to spend it, and who we said, but doing on rehabs, whether that's agreed or not, and not doing any of those other works, then that's a decision for you to make. That's why we brought it here, because it essentially becomes unsubsidised money.
It does, and I don't think we'll do it today. I think we'll get a conclusion today, recommendation, and we'll park that for probably another day where we've got time to go through it. Some things I think councillors will agree with in there, and some they won't, so it'll be a good debate to find out what work we do with that extra money. But let's get to the motion very shortly and get that underway. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Mark, is there any pushback if we were to go with option 1, for example, down the track? Is NZTA likely to look at us and go, oh, well, they just sort of did the bare minimum, or do we get any big ticks if we go with the option number 3? Or are they just saying, no, this is government direction?
My view is there's not going to be any kickback either way. We've made the request and they've approved what they can afford, and so then we go ahead and do that work. I'm pretty sure we'll 100% spend our subsidised money this year anyway, and probably in the next 2 years as well, if things don't change very much. What the council then does with its share, NZTA aren't necessarily going to worry about, but they do know, and along with the rest of the country, that there's work to do on our roading networks, and state highways and local roads do need more money spent on them, and that's why that pothole prevention activity has been created, is that identifying that that's where we want to spend money. If we decided to spend our share on that as well, that wouldn't be seen in a bad way, but it wouldn't be seen in a bad way whether we decide to spend on low cost, low risk projects either, because they're approving what they can approve. I'm sure we'd all like to spend more, and I'm pretty sure our investment advisors would be happy to say you recommend to spend more as well. But this is what has been approved and what they want us to focus on. And we know what we need to focus on, and it's not necessarily that other things don't want to be done. Maintaining what we've got has just got a higher priority at the moment.
Mark, do you know the State Highway Network will have applied for monies from NZTA. Did they get all the monies they requested from their parent body?
Similar to our request for operations and pothole prevention, I understand it, yes. But they're in the same position with the low cost, low risk stuff as well, I think. So, yeah.
Treated the same as us.
Yeah, pothole prevention is where pretty much everything has been approved. Although not all councils have had virtually 100% of that approved either, because they've just asked a bit more than NZTA could afford as well. I think when you look at the region, I think we had the lowest percentage increase as a bid, and it's probably the most realistic bid to what council can afford, what NZTA could afford. That's why we got pretty much everything we asked for. Don't know if they all did, but pothole prevention is something that got funded pretty much across the country, and low cost, low risk projects didn't.
Thank you. I think question time is over. There's a recommendation there, and I'd like to move that council spends the council LTP budgeted share of the reduced subsidised budget for the 24-25 year, 2.4 million, across agreed work categories to be approved later. I'll move.
I'll second that.
Open for debate. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Reluctantly, I agree, I support it. It's now $3 million of unsubsidised money we've put into roading. My concern is the government are going to encourage that trend. We left many projects out of our LTP because of our roading budget in the hope we would get fully subsidised, and we haven't been, and those other projects, some of them we never even got to look at. So I just want our ratepayers to be aware that $1 million a year for the next 3 years directly is from their rates with no subsidy from our government.
Councillor Wilson.
I support the motion, and I think money for roading is the best thing for it, and many ratepayers would applaud us spending it on the roading and on the roads as it was, because once you get your roads up, your economy improves, and then the council has more money because the economy's improved. So I applaud what they're trying to do.
No further speakers for or against. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. We've got two more items for more than that. Three. It's 3 o'clock. Do you want to adjourn now for a cup of tea? 3:30. We better box on. We'll carry on. We'll do another couple more items. Next item, number 15, submission on State Highway 76 to State Highway 1 Southern Motorway Speed Limit Review. Welcome. Question, anything further to add to the submission or the report?
Through the chair, thank you. Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? This is on the motorway in Christchurch, so everyone wishing to increase the speed limit to 110. No questions? Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to mention coming south towards Rolleston, we have to go down to one lane. Should we be kind of, to me, that's a bit of a dangerous stretch of road. If 100, there needs to be pretty good signage there and lowering speeds, because it is a trap at busy peak times where that traffic banks up, and they're trying to get into that one lane going into Rolleston on the lights, and the 110 really concerns me, people whipping down there and whoopsie and coming off those side ramps. Whether we just put some stronger words there that...
Is there a question amongst there? We want stronger words.
Could we ask, put some stronger words in there that to take note of that wee piece of stretch of road, there's better signage or something. I agree with the 110, but it's that last stretch there needs something done.
There is an overpass planned for that intersection you talk about where the lanes merge.
Well, it's that whole highway, isn't it? 110 both ways.
Is an overpass planned for going in there where the road merges into one lane now? Traffic lights disappear, an overpass goes in, which will alleviate the problem. It's been budgeted for several years. It is supposed to happen in the next year or so.
Mr Chairman, if it was council's will, we can certainly add a couple of words to the submission, subject to enhanced signage just north of Rolleston and the approach to the single lane, and add those words if that's council's will.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. I'm just looking at number 9 on page 113. You could either add it to that or just it could be incorporated into that.
Okay.
Number 9.
Take that on board. Further questions? Phil, thank you. Recommendation there, we approve the draft submission to NZTA. Councillor Lovett moved, Councillor Todd seconded. Open to debate.
Yeah, I support the submission. I think the comments on 7, 8 and 9 are good comments, good sound logic, and Councillor Lovett's concerns. You still have to go under what the speed limit says, and it is 80 coming into that single. So as long as you're going under the thing, under the speed, you're actually riding safe, and it is very well enforced, that section of motorway. There's always traffic cops on it, so I fully support it.
Councillor Todd?
Yes, I also support it. I travelled that road yesterday actually, and I won't say that I was doing close to the recommended new speed, but there was cars passing me, so I think people are observing the 110 limit now.
We'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Next item, Mayor's Report, number 16, page 114. Any questions? There's the results of the AGM remits. We've got 16.2, the age-friendly steering group, and which Councillor Cameron chairs. Do you chair that, I think? You're a member of. Yeah. And there's a recommendation there that Council writes to the Ministry of Social Development in support of age-friendly Ashburton Steering Group's application for funding from the Age-Friendly Fund. Councillor Cameron?
Can I move that recommendation?
Yes. And a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor, open for debate. Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Anything, questions on the Mayor's report? If not, I'll move the receipt of the Mayor's report. Seconder, Councillor Todd. All those in favour, please say aye. Gets carried. Thank you. I think that takes us to the Councillor.
Sorry.
The open part of the meeting.
Yes, it's probably a wee bit late, but item 8 on the Balmacan stream, can I have my vote recorded on that, please?
You voted against, I think, did you?
Yes.
The recommendation. We can do
Yeah,
that.
and
Councillor Hooper. Hope you all did vote against it. To be recorded against. Councillor Cameron and Hooper as well. Thank you. Will someone like to move that we go into public excluded?
I'll move.
Councillor McMillan, Councillor Wilson, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We'll adjourn now for a cup of tea. Thank you, Jono, for your attendance.
Thank you.